And yeah, I would like to briefly. Hier ist es noch nicht zu sehen. Here we go. Wunderbar. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you the project which we have took in place in August 2020 actually, where we built up an infrastructure to interconnect existing digital solutions by some very few functions, and to establish a broader ecosystem how these different installations can talk one to each other. Now, first of all, it's the digital education space. It's as I said, the broader space where all these implementations are established right now. We have some ideas about the digital network infrastructure, how to interconnect them, which functions will be crucial for that. I give you we have a funding approach which is actually on two tracks. One track is it's not funding, it's just tendering and buying. The federal government buys some infrastructure to interconnect projects, but of course you shouldn't establish an ecosystem without having partners in the ecosystem. So we have a funding procedure too, which asked and still ask for projects who will interconnect or which interconnected to that platform. And as maybe was presented, the BIRD project of also participation also of DAAD is one of the prototypes which established that technology, how to interconnect, and the more the development we proceeds, the more the national education platform will take over these infrastructure functions. I give you a short presentation of funded projects. It's just some examples. It's nothing more, but to give you an expression about the broad spectrum which is funded here. But as I said, the important thing is not the educational spectrum. The important thing is that the projects will be able to interconnect one to each other by the core functions we are establishing. And then we have the possibility for some discussions. Now, as everybody knows, Germany is a federal republic with 16 states, and 16 states have also the mandate by law, by the constitution, to be responsible for all things about culture in schools. So I'm a civil servant of the Bund, which is the federal government. So what do we do here? What is our function here? And our function could well be, and this is also part of the constitution, to provide some means for digital interoperability between the federal functions. And that's what we're actually doing. And we asked ourselves, and we learned quite a lot about how can interoperability, difficult word for me, be established. How can harmonized and federated access be established, not by an institutional perspective, but by a user perspective, which is in some respect not very common and not very usual. And how can overreaching learning catalogs, so just the possible of reachable solutions can be made up, and what are the steps to be taken to establish some standards and some joint access to these very federated catalogs. That's what it is about. Now, as I said, it's not so much about, or it's not at all actually about learning procedures or learning offers, or be it campus management, or even just school management, or learning platforms or whatsoever. That's not our topic. Our topic is the interconnection of these things already being in place. Of course, this also means that mobility of learners, not only in the digital space but also in the analog space, is promoted. So if for example the administrative procedures can be done and can be also administered by can be administrated by the institution digitally. Of course, also mobility would benefit. If somebody is able to get a local access to some learning system, for example, of a university or of a school, there should be also the option to come directly with some sort of single sign logon to other or most other offers by other people, and also it's necessary to get access to learning group, to collaborative learning environments via this identification. That also means that this identification must be very secure, and of course it must be user self-managed, and that's the last point. Now, we have in mind not an institutional perspective, but we have in mind a learner journey perspective. That I think very, very important. That from the very beginning to the also the learning steps which are taken when you are in a professional career are mastered, and we have in mind something like a procedure where the learning results, but also the learning networks are under control of the user, and the user itself is able to interconnect with other users and with other opportunities which are offered by learning institutions. That's steps which are replicated very often during that journey, and I think that's a very, very important thing when we design the tools to interconnect these learning systems. Yes, and at the end of the day, of course, this topic is portability, and still the old one, but anyway, it's portability of learner data, micro-credentials, but at the end, it's all about learning artifacts. So what is learning artifacts which refer to myself? How can they be managed by myself? How can they be offered? How can they be offered to other people which I like, from my personal point of view, which I like to collaborate with? All that's the topic we are trying to build, for which we try to build digitally based management tools. So it's if you have a look at the educational space, and I think it's very typical for federal education system. This must not be Germany. This if you have a look to Switzerland, it might look quite similar, or very Swiss, then also very federated. And this is today. It's a lot of very separate dots, and the dots are not accessible. Or they are always individually accessible, or very often individually accessible. And how could a means look like to establish that when you have access to one dot, to come to the others immediately from a user perspective, so you do not have any password and management and all that stuff, that you can exchange your data, exchange your networks of other learners and teachers, of course. This is what it's all about, and it's a very, very broad, in very broad sense, it's an infrastructure question. It's an infrastructure question which, of course, tries to interconnect the typical ecosystem features we face in Germany. But it's not a learning system. So what are the different steps to be taken when we have some sort of user journey in mind? Now we have these educational opportunities at the very beginning. Of course, they are not interconnected with this network relations, but they are all, as I said in the last slide, they are all alone. And of course, every dot stands for whether a provider, whether some sort of infrastructure like archives or whatsoever, but also for users. Every part of that, or every player in that network, in that ecosystem, at the end should be able to be found, but always if the person or the responsible person for that institution, of course, gives its consent. So the first thing, of course, is just to establish some sort of possibility and means and functionality to get access to the offers which are in that space, or to the later on, as I will tell you, with some more steps to be done, with to get access to the actors, to the people within that ecosystem. So it's very much on search. It's on login, and it's filtering. It doesn't show really nicely, but anyway, I think I hope I can make the point. Of course, a search becomes much more powerful when you are able to provide some profile, some personal or some institutional profile information for that search, and of course some sort of search history. This is of course for every Google user nothing really new, but of course you should be able to manage that for yourself, and this is a key feature of the whole thing, that the management of what is provided for searching data, for finding other people, for finding other features, is managed by the user itself. It's a function which takes place in a wallet solution I will show you immediately. So this wallet is actually a secure place where all the learning artifacts, but also are placed. The wallet itself is crypted, so the provider and is not able to see what's inside. But the user is, of course, the user will have some sort of an interface, or it will be some sort of a cockpit, and the user can also say, and also by some sort of, if you like, smart contracts, say how long different information will be made available to other participants in the network, in the ecosystem. And I think this is very important also with in respect to data protection, but it's also, of course, some sort of a special mindset we have in mind, that users should be able to manage themselves during that journey, which of course does not mean have in mind, for example, pupils in a very early stage in school, that they have in some sort of a role model with their parents, for example, that they have people supporting them with the management of that wallet. But of course, it's a personal journey which is managed here. Now, if this wallet connector, which is some sort of technology, is established, of course, we have some very ecosystem or educational ecosystem specific features, which is of course constituted by educational artifacts, which are digital certificates, but by no means we intend only to handle standardized text like for example certificates or diploma or whatsoever, but it's also the possibility to put open formats of documents within that wallet and provide this to other people. Important is that it's already known who puts personally some input, some data in the wallet, and this provider, the sender, if you like, will be identifiable also by digital signatures. So it can be always found and proven who sent it, in case you need to have that verification information. And this is, of course, is a very big question about handling of data security features also. But we think it's very important. For example, if you take the example of certificates, that a certificate, of course, has always an institution which might still exist, hopefully mostly, or which might not exist anymore. But once there was an institution which was able and allowed to provide this information, so there must be some digital signature on it. And if you look through the whole journey, you always have these features in mind. And of course, there is of course a topic, if misuse is taking place, it should also be possible to find who put in some misusable or some wrong data in for example, in also criminal respects. Of course, we shouldn't, or we are not able to see to filter it in advance. Now, having all this infrastructure information, or this infrastructure functions, better to speak for, there might be a lot of services which then can be accessed. Have in mind some sort of an ecosystem. Have a platform with central functions in mind. Have a platform with the periphery around it in mind, which is served by the central functions. Have in mind that the infrastructure is not the actual learning environment, but the infrastructure is the set of functions enabling to come from one learning opportunity to another. This is what it's all about. And of course, how to find within the whole ecosystem the information and the catalog information, if you like, what's in there. That's what it is about. And that's why we are talking also about an educational, the digital infrastructure for education. We are not talking about a learning platform. We hope, of course, that the more institutions, but also the more persons are interconnected via this procedure, the more offers can be reached, the more networks can be reached, and so on. And this makes, of course, this is of course a very that makes easy usability a very central and crucial point. If from a user's perspective, and also if from an institutional perspective, it's whether very difficult to get access to the thing, to manage, for example, the single sign logon and the wallet. Of course, nobody will use it. And the same is, of course, true for institutions trying to interconnect via that network. So this is very, very crucial parts of the whole game. And therefore, we have a very strong eye on that. And when I come to the projects we are funding, I will do that in a few minutes. You will see that our first aim is, when we establish these infrastructure functions, that the projects we are interconnecting, that we learn with them how the thresholds actually of access can be brought down as far as possible. Of course, subject to the data security and privacy aspects we have in mind. So it's, as I said, we started in 21. The decision was made in August 2020. I just have that in mind. And we have a strong timetable. This timetable was not our own invention, but it's also the invention of the European Commission, where we get most of the money from, not most, but all, until 2025. Within the ministry, so we are acting with federal money. The money is provided via the European Recovery Plan for the COVID pandemic. And yes, as you can see, in the next year we have quite a nice milestone and quite a demanding one. We need to establish a beta version in Q3. I can say that very frankly because everybody who likes it can of course read it. In the documentation of the DAAD, which is the paper of that. So, what did we do? We had a pilot project, which I think is very much described also in that event. We have the architecture steps we took so far and the first procurements. We have a dynamic procurement system, which is in Germany not a very common procurement procedure. So we are able actually in our procurement to have software sprints, to establish revolving software sprints. That means that it's very important that we have an integrating facility. We have a big project office, which technically is run and supported by Capgemini. The project facilitator is VDI. They are working jointly together. And we have, of course, as I said, and this was the double approach, if you like, that we said, okay, it doesn't make sense to establish an infrastructure without having possible customers play, however you like to describe it, to evaluate this infrastructure in a more or less friendly environment. Because if you don't do that, whether the infrastructure features are gaining too much room, or maybe if you don't interconnect the educational projects we funded so far, and you don't have any goals, any milestones to interconnect with this infrastructure, of course the projects will do what their educational task is only. But our topic is to interconnect. So this is therefore we have also from the milestones point of view for the educational solution projects, we have a very strong need actually to prove that they can interconnect via the platform. And if this proof is not brought, there will be no further funding, which is a good incentive, I think. Now, coming from the infrastructure topic to the educational solutions, we will in the first place interconnect via this structure, and we did a call. We had some 70 projects. They are now a little bit restructured after a preparatory phase, and as you can see, we were quite happy with the different sectors actually we were able to address. Research and education, but also private enterprises, edtechs if you like, also. Civil society, for example, in the civil society there is the Deutscher Volkshochschulverband, which is further education, the biggest further education institution in Germany. And that's I think a very important thing, because if you think in terms of the user journey I mentioned a few minutes ago, of course you will cross all of these sectors. So it's very useful to have them in very early. Now, if you see what are the target groups within that funding, always have in mind target groups which interconnect via the functions we are providing. That's what our aim is. Then you see teachers, learners, institutions trying to adapt, but also, for example, a provider for learning contexts. In German, the word is Schulbuchverlage, for example. And this is also a topic which is very important. Provider of microservices that might well be, for example, services which add important functions to the core functions of that network. Of this digital network functions we are establishing. It must not mean that the set we imagined so far must be final. So we are open for not only additional ideas, but also of course we have to look around what technical progress is about at the moment, also with respect to our functions. And of course, it's very important to have in mind that what we are doing from a technical point of view is, of course, here established in the thematic domain of education, but it's not at all technology only established, only developed for that domain. That would be the worst mistake we could ever make, and we don't do that. We have mostly standard technologies which we try to integrate. So I think I shouldn't read about the fields of education. You can see that we also reached the institutions along the possible learner journey. You see also that we have learning providers, if you like, with quite different payment or business models. Here you can see, I also would like over that very quickly, what sort of functions actually are tackled by the project. And I just want to come to an end with just showing you some of the projects we we are funding and we are connecting, which is the more important thing. We are connecting via the infrastructure, and first of all, it's the platform for international student mobility. It's a project which already run for some years, and the experts in the audience who know the typical standards might recognize words like ELMO MREX or Erasmus without papers. It also comes from very international background, but of course, if you are able to manage and to administer a change from, let's say, the University of Aachen to the University of Maastricht, and then from Maastricht to Osnabrück, you should be able to come from Aachen to Osnabrück too. So internationally workable also means that it works locally. And that's, I think, an important point. And the technology, which is the keywords you can see in the technology, or the standards, if you like, which are in there, of course, are not the technologies which immediately fit to the key components of the infrastructure. As I said, it's some sort of an SSO context, a single sign logon. It's a wallet. It's some sort of a federated identity management, and so on. But this project is not about reinventing PIM, but making it work with the infrastructure. The second is a project quite close to DAAD, might not astonish anybody here, where we of course have in mind how to support via the functions of the digital network we establish the exchange, but also the collaboration between higher education teachers, but not only in a local context, but in an international context. This is of course also nationally very important, because nobody really believes that the technological and of course also the maybe technological standards, but also the pedagogic procedures are just something which are limited to Germany only. Of course not. And so I think it's important to have an international outreach, but of course we are very keen in also helping for enabling Leipzig and the partners here to interconnect to these partners using our functions, and thereby also validating the functions we have in the infrastructure. It's always the aim. Please have that in mind. The aim is always not only supporting educational projects, but validating the functions we believe, or also we learned. Have in mind BERT, have in mind the digital campus, have in mind other projects we learned which are necessary to interconnect different educational projects, and not only in a pedagogic context, but also in a surrounding administrative context, which is also very important. So the last project I would like to show you is I see some members of the Open Educational Resources community here. So what? I mustn't talk so much. Nevertheless, you just see that what is that the topic of the joint catalog and the description of learning opportunities, and to standardize the providing of metadata, and also the necessities of how much metadata is actually needed to provide enough information in a catalog for users to find the right thing at the right place. And it's also a question of quality assurance, but not with respect to the actual learning content, but how is it described? When is it this learning content described in a manner that is from a perspective of an infrastructure which should enable to get or to provide access, that the information is enough. I think that's our need actually to develop and to elaborate how much is needed, and of course here is also true what is true for every other metadata thing. You can, of course, have high standards with respect to the data structure which has to be provided, but of course, the people who provide the data are in the learning institutions, and of course, if the incentives for these people are not enough to provide valuable data, of course, the rest is also not very nice. Yes, that would be it. Thank you very much.